We'll call the joint workshop of the City Planning Commission and City Council to order. Commissioner Smith, if you give us the prayer and the pledge, please, sir.
Most gracious and almighty God, our Father, we come once again thankful for this opportunity to be servants of your city. We thank you, God, for how you continue to lead, guide, and direct us, and thank you for the protection you provide. Ask now that you allow us, oh God, to be open-minded, to be receptive, that we be disagreeable, that we can be agreeable. This we pray in thy Son Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So before we get started, I want to go ahead and we didn't have a chance at the last council meeting to introduce or have Dave Woods introduce himself. And so why don't you just take a minute or two and kind of tell us who you are and your role here at the city.
Okay, well, my name is Dave Woods. I've been living here in Apopka for about 8 years now. I've been in Central Florida about 23, 24 years. Best place I've ever lived. I originally moved down here to figure out what I wanted to do next. And if anybody wants to give me some advice, I'll really appreciate that. I first got involved actually with the mayor and city council on the Emerson Park private to public road project. I've been involved with our local HOA, and one of the things I've always looked at in public service is for the benefit of the people, not an individual. And when the mayor approached me about serving on the planning commission, I was a little apprehensive at first, but then I look at an opportunity since we have so much growth happening and so much potential growth ahead of us, that it would be an opportunity for me to influence as the average man. No skin in the game. I'm not a developer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a realtor. And just giving a different perspective to what the man on the street thinks of it.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. All right. Bobby, you want to get us started?
Good evening, everyone. Bobby Howell, the Planning Manager with the Community Development Department. So we are having the second workshop for the joint meeting for the Comprehensive Plan Rewrite. We had our original workshop on September 10th, 2024. We went over some issues related to the rewrite of the comp plan, gather information. It was a public workshop. Commissioner Velasquez had requested that we have a second workshop to allow for more public input. I know that we've been kind of blasting this one out to get the word out on this one. It's been noticed on the city's website, the Apopka Proud email blast newsletter, the social media feeds of the city, and in the Apopka Chief newspaper, I believe the last week's edition or the 2 weeks ago. In addition, a citizen survey was conducted in 2024, and an additional citizen survey is ongoing through the month of February and can be accessed on the city's website and via the Apopka Proud email blast. Following the first workshop, the city contracted with Kimberly Horn under a current contract that we have that allowed them to review the first draft of the rewrite of the comp plan, to offer an outside expert's perspective, and to determine how the draft would apply to daily practice. The updated policies have been reviewed by relevant city departments such as the police department, fire department, public services, and a recreation department. The updated policies in the comprehensive plan would reflect that this is the main document that provides the policy foundation for local planning and land use decisions for a respective jurisdiction in the state of Florida. Per Florida Statute 163.3171, that comprehensive plan shall provide the principles, guidelines, standards, and strategies for the orderly and balanced future economic, social, physical, environmental, and fiscal development of the area that reflects the community commitments to implement the plan and its elements. These principles and strategies shall provide future decisions in a consistent manner and shall contain programs and activities to ensure comprehensive plans are implemented. The plan shall establish meaningful and predictable standards for the use, in development of land and provide meaningful guidelines for the content of more detailed land development use regulations. So basically what it is saying is that the comprehensive plan is a policy document, it's a foundation document. What do we want to be when we grow up? The land development code is how that's implemented. So when you're age 14, you wear a size 10 shirt, is kind of to summarize it in a nutshell kind of way. All jurisdictions in the state of Florida are required to have a comprehensive plan per Florida statute. And that includes the city of Apopka and any other city or county within the state. Per Florida statute, comprehensive plan is required to have the following elements: a future land use element, a housing element, infrastructure, conservation, recreation and open space, transportation, which was adopted by the City Council, that rewrite on August 7th, 2024. That was done on a separate contract. Intergovernmental coordination, property rights, which was adopted by the Council in 2021, and resilience and sustainability, which is an optional element, but we have it in this draft. We feel it's important. The current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2011, some 14 years ago now. The city contracted with the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council to rewrite the comprehensive plan with the exception of the transportation element. This rewrite will modernize the comprehensive plan to make the land development regulations consistent with it. So the land development regulations were adopted first. You probably heard that before. And the comprehensive plan is not really consistent with the land development regulations. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing the rewrite. The purpose of this workshop is to solicit any input and questions or input that you may have for the comprehensive plan and make those changes prior to the rewrite being presented in public hearings. Michelle Morrison with East Central Florida Regional Planning Council is here to present the draft. Following her presentation, Dr. June Son of the planning staff will present changes from the first draft to the second. At the conclusion of the workshop, we will ask for a consensus to move the rewrite forward to public hearings that will begin in April, which will allow staff time to make any additional changes that are necessary. Once it would go forward to public hearing, then that would allow the public to come to the City Council Planning Commission meetings to make any changes or requests known. If it is then taken to City Council, it would be transmitted to the Florida Department of Commerce. They would review it, and then it would come back to the city for final review and comment, and then sent back to the state once again. So with that, I will turn it over to Michelle with the Regional Planning Council.
Thank you, Michelle.
I'm a little shorter than Bobby. And then to advance, just use this. Okay. So I'm Michelle Morrison, Planner 3 with East Central Florida Regional Planning Council. And we were contracted in late 2021 by the city to help them redraft their comprehensive plan, like Bobby said, to bring it in line with the land development regulations, which had been revised after some extensive public engagement. Here's a little bit about what I'm going to talk about tonight, which is really all about the comprehensive plan, why it came to be, why you have one, and what are the pieces and parts within the comp plan and next steps. But first, if you're wondering about the Regional Planning Council, there are 10 of us in the state of Florida. We are an association of governments, and there's a Florida statute for this. I think it's Chapter 186. We have 8 counties and 78 municipalities within our region, and we go all the way out to the coast, to Brevard and Volusia. We have 4.5 million residents in our region. Not only do we promote intergovernmental coordination between local governments and the various agencies, but we specialize in providing technical assistance in many of these areas that you see listed below. The top one right there, land use comprehensive planning, that's this project. I showed this the last time, but I want to bring it back up again. The state of Florida is a growth state, and it's not just now. This is the 200 years of growth that you're looking at. It's been growing, leaps and bounds. Some people may have thought this was a place they'd never want to live, probably before air conditioning. But yeah, land of swamps, quagmires, frogs, alligators, and mosquitoes. But people still moved here. And think about when you moved here, when your family moved here. Maybe you came along with your family. My parents moved here in the 60s. I'm looking at just over 5 million residents. Well, we're looking at over 22 million residents today. The reason that you moved here or your family moved here, a lot of other people are finding it quite attractive here in Florida. So, a lot of growth. So, in response to the growth, there are things like environmental issues, providing infrastructure and public services for all the people that are here and moving here. Big in 1985 was the Comprehensive Planning and Development Regulation Act, also known as the Growth Management Act, and looking at protecting our natural resources, improving infrastructure, and promoting more orderly growth. It's hard to conceive that. Nobody thinks we have orderly growth, but we're really trying. Everybody's trying. We're one of the fastest growing states and one of the most populous states. In 2011, the state and regional coordination of that growth was lessened and more power given to the local governments. So this is the old comprehensive plan cover, like Bobby said, adopted in, I think, 2011, 2012. That was the last time an extensive rewrite of the comprehensive plan was done. The comprehensive plan is a blueprint for your community's future, but it also looks at making sure the residents' needs are met today. So we're looking at 15 to 20 years out when we write or rewrite or make an amendment to the comprehensive plan. It's a long-term vision. It lays the foundation for the zoning codes, like Bobby said, and it hasn't been overhauled in a while. So every 7 years, you're required to do an evaluation appraisal review, and I think this is in line with doing that probably on a larger scale. Let's look at more than just what statutes have changed. Let's look at how we want to do everything else. So now I'm going to dive in a little deeper to this massive document. It's massive. It's got over 500 pages in the adopted comprehensive plan, but it's organized in chapters. And these chapters are called elements. They are required by the statute, these 9 elements that you see at the top. The last one is optional, and you can have many optional elements. But we'll take a look briefly at each one. Each one is a chapter. It's defined by its goals and objectives, and it's supported by data and analysis. So this is why this document gets huge. There is data and analysis to support each of those elements. It is not required to have that posted, but the GOPs will be the plan that you have for the next, I think it's 2040, 15 years. It's a living document. You can change parts of it. Something that gets changed rather often is the future land use element. So, speaking of future land use, it is the distribution of land uses throughout your jurisdiction. So, if you think about where people are living, where businesses are, where industry is, where parks are, how people access those. Are they riding a bike? Are they driving in their cars? Are they taking public transit? That is all guided by your comprehensive plan. So, future land use is huge. It directs what you're going to look like in the future. But all these other elements support and interrelate. Nothing stands on its own in this comprehensive plan. So next, capital improvements. That's your budgeting, how you're going to afford all the things that fall underneath capital improvements. Infrastructure, those are your public services, very water related, potable water, groundwater, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste. So there are 5 sub-elements to infrastructure. It is an absolutely huge element with hundreds of policies. Conservation is all about protecting your natural resources, your air, your water, also including habitats, flora, and fauna. Housing, addressing the housing needs, that includes attainable and affordable housing. Recreation and open space, you can think of parks and rec providing areas and also access for both active and passive recreation. Also, and how you get to these parks, where are they located? Transportation and mobility. It's often being called mobility now because we want to think of access for all ages and all levels. We think about roads, but we also think about alternative modes of transportation. A lot of people want more walkability, bikeability, maybe want to hop on a bus. So all of this is in your mobility or transportation element. Intergovernmental coordination. And that is coordinating the planning efforts with neighboring communities, also regional agencies, state and federal authorities. There are a lot of local agreements or agreements between different members in this element. And then finally, property rights. This is very recent. This element was required in 2021, and we got that transmitted in, I think, December of 2021. It's a very short element, but it gives local governments a great deal of independence with respect to regulation of private land uses. And then finally, resilience and sustainability. It's a really big term nowadays, and resilience, all about being resilient, not only for your environment, both natural and built, but also for your people and your economy. So within each of these chapters or elements are goals, objectives, and policies. Your goals are general in nature and they're long-term and they're what you want in the future. Objectives, measurable and achievable. And then finally, policies relate to the objective and their actions in specific directions. So there may be oftentimes just one goal in an element, many objectives, and at least a couple policies per objective in general. So I've talked about goals, objectives, policies, commonly referred to as GOPs. The adopted plan had, I think, over 700. The proposed plan has over 600. You can see that infrastructure element, which has 5 sub-elements, all about your public services, has over 100. So the staff, the planning staff and other departments and the council went over each and every GOP, looked at every word in every GOP multiple times, often, especially for like future land use, infrastructure, housing. This took tens of hours of meetings and hundreds of hours of just independent work. A lot of work has been done, and yes, there still may be work to do. You may find something that still needs a change. So again, like Bobby said, and I reiterated, the comprehensive plan is your guiding document. From that, your land development code refines and gives more detail. Things like setbacks, parking requirements, density, height, those are in your land development code. But they have to be in line with the objectives and policies and goals within the comprehensive plan. They cannot be in disagreement with the comprehensive plan. There are over 17 maps required within the comprehensive plan, and there can be additional maps that aren't required. This is just an example of one. Very important map, future land use map. This one gets This is generally what flags an amendment to the comprehensive plan as that living document as things change. You can see there are about, I think, 20 different categories here. We have maps for things like aquifer recharge, sensitive habitats, flood zones. You've also got your water and sewer service areas. There are many maps, historical resources. This future land use map will show you. I talked before about where is housing, what kind of housing is it, where are businesses, where is industry, where are parks, where are conservation areas. And then there also is mixed use. That is when you will blend uses, often residential and retail or commercial will be blended, sometimes along with industrial. And this is the southern part of the map. Just because it's a very tall map, we decided early on with the city to break it into north and south maps for the purposes of being able to view a little easier. The council created all the maps that use commonly available data from the Water Management District, Department of Environmental Protection, county, the property appraiser's office, and then the city created some of the maps that they have the data for, like your service areas. And when I talked about data that supports the elements, it is a snapshot in time. It's ever changing. The data that we get today would be different in a month. But in general, because this is a long-term vision, 15, sometimes 20 years out, you're looking at trends. But right here is the difference between existing land use and future land use, and those two maps are both required in the comprehensive plan. Here your agricultural lands are reduced. It's happening a lot of places in Florida. Residential land increases by nearly a third. Industrial more than doubles, providing economic opportunity for your city. And then mixed uses are emerging as a significant land use in the future, with nearly 15% of the total acreage. And that's showing a focus on developing areas that combine, like I said, residential, commercial, and maybe other land uses to create vibrant neighborhoods, perhaps even ones which you don't need to get in your car to either go to work or go to shop from where you reside. So more about data. Again, trends. I showed you that trend at the very beginning, the 200-year growth curve for Florida. Here it is for Apopka, and we are required to do this in the comprehensive plan, and we are required to use medium projection data from University of Florida. And here's some of the data for that. You can see the increase in population from 2025, following 2025, the growth rate is a little slower. You can see it go from 15%, 12%, 9%, 7%. So it's getting a little less. The estimate for 2025, which is 63,296, I think that was a 15% increase from 2020. The closest measurement we have from 2024 was 61,820, and it's about 13%. So we're almost getting to that 15%. Again, the data is showing a trend. Also, there's a trend. You're about 4%, roughly, Orange County's growth, or the population, 4% of the population, and they are continuing to grow as well. So I've shown you the comprehensive plan as a whole, talked about each of the elements. They all interrelate. They are supported by data. There's lots and lots of data. Maps are required. And so it's now up to approving this. It will go through, like Bobby said, the Planning Commission hearing, also council hearing, And then that approval, it will be sent to the state. You can hear back from the state, and then you'll need another approval after that. So I'm going to stop right here and pass the mic over to June, who has all the details on GOPs within the elements.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that great presentation.
Good evening. My name is Jun Son. I'm planner at the Community Development Department. I'll present an overview of second draft of new comprehensive plan. This is going to be a boring presentation, but I'll do my best to make a good presentation. So I'll cover the concept of comprehensive plan and overview of goals, objectives of each element, and key changes after the first draft, and brief review of the residential survey result and feedback. So, although Bobby and Michelle already explained the concept of comprehensive plan, I'll just do it since I already prepared it. So, comprehensive plan is a long-term framework that guides the city's future growth and development. It establishes goals, objectives, and policies. Think of it as a big map or a blueprint for how our city should grow in future. So while comprehensive plan provides a big picture vision, the land development code serves as a rule book for land use and development. So the plan sets a long-term goal for future. The code provides a detailed regulation to implement those goals for now. So it is easy to remember in this way. Comprehensive plan is a vision for future, and the land development code is a set of rules for the present. So these are each key elements of our comprehensive plan. Although I cannot review all 100 pages of policies of our new comprehensive plan, I'll just focus on reviewing key goals and objectives of each element. The goal of future land use element is to preserve urban open spaces, foster community vibrancy, and ensure the development aligned with the available infrastructures. Key objectives include supporting infill redevelopment to reduce urban sprawl, expanding green space and urban forestry, securing land for utilities and public facilities, and promoting walkable mixed-use space. Housing element focuses on promoting attainable, safe, and high-quality housing for all income levels, and objectives include allocating sufficient land for single and multifamily housing, preserving housing quality and neighborhood stability. The goal of conservation element is to protect natural resources and ensure water qualities. And key objectives are conserving potable water, protecting wetland buffers and endangered species, and preserving 100-year floodplain. Recreation and open space element focus to provide maintain parks, recreational facilities, and open spaces for all residents. Capital improvement elements focuses on making sure public facilities and services are provided on time. And intergovernment coordination element focuses on collaborating with the neighboring government to ensure efficient growth and service delivery. For example, like coordinating with the Orange County Public Services for infrastructure, school capacity, and partnering with the state agencies to protect water services, work with the other governments to enhance infrastructure and services. The goal of resiliency and sustainability elements is to foster a resilient, inclusive, and sustainable community. And objectives are like prioritizing sustainable development and strengthening the economic resilience by supporting small businesses. So there are some important changes and updates from the first draft to second draft. For future land use, we expanded the definition of open space to include urban and recreational areas. We also added live work use in commercial and office areas. For housing, we changed the terminology from affordable housing to attainable housing. For conservation, we stated that the city prohibits new development in wetland to protect natural resources. For recreation and open space, we clearly defined the open space that we want by adding that buffer cannot be count for open space requirements, and stormwater management area may count if amenitized. We also changed the level of service standard for parks, police, and fire. So there are also other big and small changes, and I believe it was like shared through the agenda. Okay, so we conducted like 2 online surveys to gather feedbacks from our residents, and we promoted it through several different methods, as you can see. As a result, we received 23 responses from the first survey that was held on November 2024, and from the second survey, we only received 5 responses yet, and there was like YouTube clicks of about 200 clicks for our first workshop. So this is a summary on survey result and key concerns raised by residents. So the major concern was uncontrolled growth and urban sprawl related to this growth of the city. They also concerned about insufficient infrastructure and public services. There was also a couple of requests for more green space, safety measures, and mixed-use development. So here's the analysis of the feedbacks that we received so far. Overall, the participants concerned about infrastructure, sustainability, safety, green space, and mixed-use development, and they demanded a sustainable approach in prioritizing infrastructure and public services over rapid growth. So to conclude on this second draft, we reflected community needs and demands to address their concerns. For example, we refined definition of our open space to provide better access of green space, improve sustainability of the city, and the quality of life of our residents. We also collaborated with the park and recreation, police, and fire department to adjust level of service. We added live work option to provide better affordable housing options. We tried to improve our mixed use to limit urban sprawl and support sustainable growth. Overall, we focused on improving the balance between growth, sustainability, and infrastructure improvement based on the feedbacks from the resident that we received. So since so far we only had like 28 feedbacks from the residents, so it's difficult to say that that's opinion of all of our residents. However, we believe that the survey result is represent their demands and needs. So we tried our best to adopt their opinions and try to add their demands on our new comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for June? Anybody?
I've got a couple questions, if possible. Kind of go through because you guys created a pretty cool table that kind of goes what we've added, changed, or taken away. So if it's okay, I'd like to go through that and just kind of go over, I guess, the motivation as to either why the change or why the removal or addition on a couple key points, if that's okay. And it may not be one that you had already presented on. It just may be within this table that I saw, if that's okay.
So you want to go over like every changes?
Not everyone, just I have a couple marked kind of in each section, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay.
And if you don't have an answer to it, that's okay as well. If you don't remember off the top of your head why a change was made, I completely understand.
Is that the one from Kimberly Horn, the peer review?
It was whatever the attachment was to the agenda.
Yeah, so yeah, I organized the changes from the first draft to second draft after they received the feedbacks and after the consultation from the Kimley Horn and the internal discussion with our staffs. So for future land use, like major changes, I would say is
Well, and I have some specific ones, if that's okay. We don't need to go through every single one. I just have some that are marked, if that's okay. And if you have an answer to it, great. If not, we can circle back.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So it's policy 1.1.12 on the future land use that we removed. The city shall coordinate existing and future land use water supply planning with all applicable government agencies. List the agencies from there. That was removed completely. Is there a reason why that was removed?
which policy was it?
It's 1.1.12 on the future land use element. So I'll go and it'll be in order of how you presented it to us.
Policy 1.1.2.
1.1.12.
1.2. Okay.
1.1.12.
Yeah, I can answer that one, Commissioner. In the draft that you have before you, it says policy 1.111. City shall
Bobby,
coordinate
is your
existing-
mic on?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay.
Cities shall coordinate policy or future land use water supply planning with all applicable local government agencies, including municipal, county, and regional plans, St. Johns River Water Management District, and Florida DEP. So it's at policy 1.11.
What made the change, I guess, to that? Did we remove something else?
I think there was another one that was removed.
So we just moved everything up.
Yes,
basically?
we just shifted it around.
Maybe 1 point.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next one is policy 1.4.6. And that one goes into the land development code shall address and limit activities which have potential to contaminate air, water, or soil. It was removed, and policy 1.4.7 was also removed.
Yeah, because 1.45, the policy reads: the city shall seek opportunities to protect open space and natural resources through parks, stormwater management systems, and preservation of natural habitats. So we felt that that was a catch-all.
Okay.
But if you'd like it back in, we can put it back in. That's the whole purpose of why we're here.
Sure.
Just listen
Yeah, no,
to
I
things
think the
like that.
detail to it just helps to show the importance of it.
Okay.
But again, that's just my opinion there.
And that
Next
was-
one,
Sorry, Commissioner Nessa, which one did you say that was?
that was 1.4.6 and 0.7.
Yeah, if you'd like, we can add those back. So, yeah.
I think it would be valuable. Goes on to the housing element then. And then the first one on that is policy 1.1.6. And that goes into discussing densities and mixed-use development in order to develop an inventory of public-owned lands that would be ideal for affordable housing. And then the change, I guess, adds in such as ensuring long-term affordability of new affordable units and establishing effective criteria for the receipt of land. So how would we ensure long-term affordability of new affordable products? Because my understanding is usually an affordable product's pretty much only affordable once, that right in the beginning. So how do we, I guess, what type of specific measures are we going to implement to ensure that it's affordable long-term?
Yeah.
as this states?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It would be policies from the council. There's lots of policies that have been implemented in other places, and I'm not saying that that should be implemented here. And I think we talked about this at the last workshop. City of Minneapolis, for instance, they did away with zoning, and they allow what's called missing middle housing or inclusionary zoning. Those could be options. I don't know if that would be something that would be the pleasure of in Apopka of the board to have, but those could be things to look at too.
Okay. Understood. Thank you. And I think that would be something, I guess let's kind of like, let's add some more detail to that so we understand for not only this council, but future councils, what that means and what that looks like.
And which policy did you say that was?
That's
sir?
under housing. That's policy 1.1.6. So I think those are good examples of where the thought should be at to increase affordability long term.
What was that number again?
Policy 1.1.6 under housing.
1.1.6 housing. Wait a minute.
And then the next one I have is 1.2.1. We're removing, or I guess it was the change was to remove the exact number of housing units that is our goal to meet. I guess why would we remove that goal? I mean, it's a good goal to meet. So I think it's, although we may not get to it, it's something to definitely work towards. Versus, I feel that the change was a little more ambiguous because we were saying 1,307 new affordable housing units we should be adding by 2040, versus we're just going to kind of work towards that, work towards affordable housing.
Sure. I mean, I think we thought the number was something that could be challenged eventually. Oh, you haven't built this many affordable housing units. So that was one reason I'm looking at. As Michelle and June both said during their presentations, the comprehensive plan is a living document, so it could always go back and be amended. So those are some of the things we're looking at. Trends change and stuff like that. So that's kind of the approach we were coming from.
Thank you. Our attorney that we have on staff right now, and thank you for being here tonight. Do you feel that that is a litigation issue that may create down the road?
Well, I can't say that it would subject the city to litigation, but I think what I would tell you is, of course, the comprehensive plan it's meant to be. When it comes to planning, everything is tiered down. So this is your most general document. So if you want something specific like that, that might be better placed in the land development code or something along those lines, as opposed to just a general policy, which is just meant to be an overarched guiding.
That 30,000 foot view.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, understand. Thank you. Next one I have is policy 1.5.7. When housing must be removed as a result of city actions, and this is after discussing code enforcement and things of that nature, the city shall assess the feasibility of relocating lost housing units to preserve local housing and prevent resident displacement. We removed that. Did that just get changed to a different area, or is that removed completely?
June, was that one removed?
Yeah,
completely?
it was completely removed because we don't have program to support relocation of their.
We don't have that in place yet.
Yeah.
So I feel, especially with the way that the market's going in general, and just we have additional strain on residents and their ability to afford life right now, I think that would be valuable for us to at least work towards, to maybe bring in on our side a department or partner with an agency that would help with displacement of residents through those issues. So I don't know if we can maybe add that back in and then add a little more meat to it of saying we'll partner or we'll work to partner or something along those lines with agencies or other groups that can assist with preventing resident displacement. Next one, 1.6.2. We discussed, that goes into the types of development that we want to promote and support. And we took out, one of them was innovative housing such as missing middle. We took that out. And then we took out new types of infill, like brownfield redevelopment and adaptive reuse. I feel if we're going to do it kind of previously to it may help to stay in there as well.
Right. I would stay with that theme that we talked about for the inclusionable and ensuring more affordable housing.
Absolutely.
Long term.
Yeah, so if we can add that back in too. The next one is still on housing, policy 1.6.6. Encourage the integration of housing hazard mitigation and the development of city emergency management and housing policy frameworks. So it just goes into kind of discussing a housing vulnerability assessment in order to better protect housing supply against natural hazards and the ability to kind of bounce back after a natural disaster. Did that get moved at all, or do we? I think does it go back to that we don't have something in place already for that?
June, you want to address that one?
Because that one was removed completely. Again, I don't know if we. And if you don't remember off the top of your head right now, I obviously understand that as well.
And what could you repeat the policy, Commissioner?
Yeah, it's encourage the integration of housing hazard mitigation in the development of city emergency management and housing policy frameworks, and also consider conducting a housing vulnerability assessment in order to better protect housing supply against natural hazards, increasing funding opportunities for housing mitigation, and reduce time needed to bounce back from natural disasters.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. Ms. Sanchez, she thinks that one was moved to the resiliency element.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Thank you. So I thought that was very important. Again, adding some type of something along those lines, I think, would be very valuable for keeping it. Next up, we're going on to recreation and open space element. We removed, and we discussed this last time, the city adopting a level of service for parkland of 10 acres per 1,000 residents. I guess we're kind of changing it to a little more ambiguous of a. We're going to try to keep a level of standard based on other criteria. From my understanding, when Parks and Rec Director Mr. Radley came and spoke, that was kind of the nationwide goal, is to have 10 units per 1,000 residents. So I think it would be important and to keep in there to make it a goal for us to achieve. And like you guys said, we can, it's a living document, so we can change it if we're not achieving this or it doesn't seem attainable. But I think make it a goal that we at least work towards right now.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. I think that needs to be added back in too, please. Staying under recreation and open space. Oh, this is in reference to, and for everybody that's in the room, it's achieving law enforcement officers per 1,000 residents as well as firefighters per 1,000 residents. So every year during our budget workshops, both fire and police are presenting the level of service they're trying to achieve, and it's usually based on a officers per resident number. So if we're going to use that to calculate how we need to budget each department, I feel that that should also be within the policy, because I guess the request was to change that to just a level of service, an ambiguous number versus what we are specifically working towards right now.
Right. The police chief reviewed this, and his reply back was he'd like to see the language modified to state something to the effect of, the city will maintain a level of service consistent with the state average for police departments while taking into account the city's crime rate, geographic size, population growth, and other factors that may influence the department's ability to provide effective and efficient service to our community.
It's ambiguous.
Yeah.
I don't prefer ambiguity. And I guess I can sit down with the chief as well and just kind of see what the motivation is there, because every year during our workshops for the budget, we're specifically basing our budget off of that data. And I want to make sure that this policy is matching what we're budgeting and how we're running the city. So I just need to figure out kind of where the chief's head's at there and make sure we're on the same page. Last one I have, last few, under resiliency and sustainability element, it's policy 1.2.4. Through financial and implementation guiding resources, the city will work to advocate for property owners' incentives toward necessary improvements for installing electric vehicle charging stations. In addition, the city shall explore the possibility of changing or adjusting codes and parking requirements so that EV charging stations can be easily installed. We removed that. I know part of our code is to require, at least on the commercial side in multifamily, they have to have charging stations. This is, I felt, more specifically towards individual property owners. And did we just remove that, or did that move at all?
I don't think it moved. I know the state building code requires that you have to have at least 2 EV charging stations for non-residential parcels, I believe it is, which would include apartment complexes and then commercial developments. We can put that back in if you'd like to encourage more EV parking stations.
I think that's the way that there's a lot more electric vehicles out there right now. And I think, again, it's not a steadfast, has to happen, but again, it creates a goal for us to help our residents that may need it or find incentives for them to install those in their properties. The next one down, 1.2.5. It's going into building energy codes and redevelopment to include energy conservation measures. Uh, and I think we just removed, or the request was, the city is also encouraged to educate multifamily property owners and tenants about low cost energy efficiency opportunities. What was the reason to remove that that sentence?
Do you want to take
We,
that one?
we don't have education programs so
Okay.
far, so
So similar concept. I would like to leave that in. Again, it gives us a goal. I think that it adds value to our residents, our developers. It helps everybody, and in a long run, it's going to save people money as well. The next one I have is policy 1.2.7. The city shall work to promote and encourage the development community to obtain green certifications under the U.S. Green Building Code, and it goes into some other programs as well. We remove that completely. Is that kind of the same concept if we just don't have anybody on staff that's focused on that? Okay. I'd like to see that in. Again, it's a goal for us to achieve. I think it's definitely a value add to our residents. And then the last one is that policy 1.4.6. The city shall encourage the use of community gardens, open green spaces, and public facilities for community multi-generational purposes, fostering activities that promote physical and mental health and increase residents' connection within their community as well as natural environments. I think we just took out that last part about physical and mental health, connection with the community and environment. Was there a goal for that, or that just maybe it was a shorter verbiage versus longer? Was there a reason for that?
I think it was just more the verbiage, June.
Kind of cleaning it up.
yeah.
If we can add that back in again, I think having us have goals that are on here of fostering community, physical and mental health, being connected with nature and your community, I think is valuable for us to continue to promote as a city. So that's it. Thank you for the time, and sorry for the rest of the council for the time I took, but I think it's very important.
Thank you.
All right, Dave, you got any thoughts?
Just trying to take it all in.
Good. Okay, thank you. All right, Member Doomy.
Good evening. Yes, I really like the conservation element change for the new development of wetlands. I think it's important. The other thing I'd like to continually reinforce is I hope that the folks sitting behind me that have the capacity to change this would change the land development code to more alignment with Orange County to increase to 35%.
Mike's on. Need to turn your mic on there.
I did it again. No, I just would like to see the land development code change. I know this is a strategy document, but the land development code should be changed to align ourselves with Orange County and the green spaces, the 35% contiguous green spaces from 20%. That's a 75% increase from what we have today to where we could have in the future. But this would also help us meet our conservation as well. I think that's very important for the city. So I just want to continue to reinforce that. Happy with the changes so far. It looks good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Norwood? Nothing? Member Mock?
So in reading through this information, and I appreciate the initial presentation that the comprehensive plan is more of a 30,000 look, and then because this was one of my questions as I was reading through the comprehensive plan, then you go to the next level, which is the land development code, and then from the land development code you go to zoning, or
Zoning's within the land development code.
zoning's within the land development code. Okay, so some of the comments that I will make and ask in questions maybe are not appropriate for the comprehensive plan and could be more slated toward the land development code, but not seeing that, I don't know. So, just going through that, I'm kind of like Commissioner Nesta, I'm probably a little bit more sensitive to what is written and the words that are there. If the words are there, I expect we should follow. Okay. Just as a general comment, as I was reading through this, and this is a comment and potentially a question. Again, if we have something like this and we're going to follow this, who is the gatekeeper? And I realize that there are different departments that have different things specifically in this, but who's the overall gatekeeper that monitors this, tracks this, etc.?
It's the planning staff.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. So one of the things that there's words in here. For instance, in the future land use element, it says new development and redevelopment must meet the adopted levels of service for public facilities to establish, established by the comprehensive plan. Um, where do we define uh, adopted levels of service?
It would be in the infrastructure element, transportation element, capital improvements element, those types of things. And
Okay.
then sometimes I think levels of service are also brought over into the land development code as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then policy 1.1.2, it states shall encourage timely development of necessary public facilities. My question is, when it states shall encourage, does that mean that we can encourage and people can do something else? And what are the time frames that these items are to be built? That is fairly general,
Mhm.
and my guess would be in the comprehensive plan. But as development happens, a lot of what I see happens 2-3 years later. Massive congestion. It's just a lengthening of the congestion that goes on, and I realize there are certain things that have to, infrastructure has to be done, then you can take the next step, then you can do the next step. But I'm trying to understand um, the words shall encourage, and where do we hold the accountability? I don't, I'm just,
Yeah.
I can encourage all day long, and you
Yeah.
can say, thank you for your words and move on.
You're absolutely right. It's a request more than a requirement. I mean, you could request that that's changed to shall require instead of encouraged. If you want us to change it to that,
So,
we could do that.
so my deal is in thinking of this, because we're thinking of this till 2030 and 2040, correct? The next 15, 18, 20 years. I'm not sure how willing individuals are going to be when we just um, suggest. I think we should probably come to if we're doing planning and we're trying to forecast into the future, maybe we do some things that are much more pointed than suggesting. Okay, just as a comment. Um, there was one which left me with some questions. 1.1.6 and 1.1.7. This is still under the future land use element. The word annexation shows up in this policy, and um, my question is, of those two policies, um, when they're talking about annexation, is this in general, or are we having some reference to South Apopka, or what is that in reference to?
It's in reference to property in general. So what it's saying is that if you are receiving the city's utilities, you're within the utility service area, you're eligible for annexation, contiguous or touching the city limit, then you're required to annex. There's other jurisdictions that do that. One is City of Tavares. They have what are called pioneering agreements for utilities. Properties that are out on 448, far removed from the city limits, have gotten utilities out there. They've been there for 20 years. I think Maldora is one of them as well, where they make people sign an intent to annex at such time their property is contiguous because they're accepting their utilities.
Okay, so it's more in reference to rural.
Could be urban also. We have some properties that are what we call sawtooth that are surround or like this cities around there. So that could be, it could be both. Yeah.
So I think there's probably some area of improvement there with the land development code.
Mhm.
What specifically does that, when we're talking about this as a policy? In 1.18, the flood water management. Um, I realize we have engineers, but do we contract with entities that are certified specialists in these areas? I think recently we've all experienced a larger than normal rainfall, two hurricanes that, one was a little farther out, one was much closer, that type of thing. And how are we as a city through the land development code looking to, I guess what I'm saying is, and the concern that I have is, if we're planning and we're going through this and we know that this has happened, we just, yeah, that happens every 100 years and we just move on. That's not what I hear when I listen to the feedback in the situations that are there. So I'm looking for something through the comprehensive plan and the land development code that gets much more specific on something that we're very, very aware of. In Central Florida, Apopka, and lakes, etc., and water runoff, that kind of thing. There was a 1.2, and Commissioner Nesta mentioned this, the infill redevelopment part of this. Is this referring to city-owned properties that are currently not developed?
No, it's referring to any property that's
Any
infill.
property?
Mhm.
And there was another question that I have in 1.2.2. Roughly, how many grants are available yearly to the city of Apopka? And is there a designated person that's the gatekeeper of all grants, or are they just individual department people when I get to it? Timelines, deadlines, meeting those.
There's a woman in the finance department. That's our grants coordinator.
Okay.
Yes.
And how many are there? And is this a full-time position, or is this
She is
part-time, quarter-time?
She's a full-time employee of the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a 1.2.4. My question is there a development plan that shows, and I put in parentheses here, or in quotes, the traditional character looks like? That was in the policy. Traditional character meaning, what are we referring to there? I realize that could be more in probably the land development code, but again, I'm not leaving this up to a suggestion.
Mm-hmm. So it's talking about the downtown, mixed-use downtown district, CRA primarily. Traditional character would be the building that's next door where the sweets shop is at, or the building across the street that's been used. It's a multi-use building, so that's what that's alluding to.
Okay. I have 9 pages, but I'm not going to go through the 9 pages of observations and questions. I'll just state that, again, and listening to Commissioner Nesta take, some of the questions and points, I'm, as I look at this, and I can put more, and I can send this to you, because whether this be the 30,000 look, and then you go to the land development code, I am not in favor of being general. When you say this post should not be taller than 12 inches, then I don't want to see a post taller than 12 inches. If you just say a post, you're going to find a post that's 3 feet tall.
Right. Land development code gets to that. You shall not have a setback of more than 5 feet, or you shall have a 20-foot front setback. Comprehensive plan is more of a, like you said, more of a 30,000 foot level. But there's things in there that encourage. Obviously, it's pretty please.
And the last thing that I would bring up is, from a transparency perspective, okay, you showed maps. Those maps are available on the city website and are interactive.
These maps are available. This draft has been posted on the city website.
Okay.
As of right now, the maps aren't interactive, but the city does have interactive maps on the website that our GIS person does and puts on there.
Is it possible in this comprehensive plan that where there are items that then go from the comprehensive plan and refer directly to the land development code, is there a possibility to be able to put that in parentheses, see land development code, you know, et cetera? Is that so that an individual that's looking can go, oh, I should go to the land development code now to see the specifics? Is there anything,
Yeah, that's
type of
interesting.
et cetera?
Any comp plan I've ever worked for and the jurisdictions that I've worked for, and Michelle, you can chime in, and Mr. Hand as well. I've never seen something say C land development code or like a cross reference to the land development code. It usually cross references other policies, but I don't know in your experiences if you've seen anything like that.
That would be unusual. It's more of like a constitution. So if anything, when you're looking, it'd be sort of reversed. Everything, and as you know, as a planning commission member, everything that comes through, whether it's an LDR, land development regulation, or whether it's a potential development, has to be evaluated to be in line with the comprehensive plan. So, in other words, the comprehensive plan, although it's a living and breathing document, and you have to go through, you know, your EAR process, ultimately, which is more of a letter process now as opposed to a full review. But you go through these, getting the comprehensive plan right. It's really the development code which changes more frequently. So that's what's supposed to be more adaptive. And so, just to give you an example, so for instance, a general statement, there was something on the public facilities, you know, to encourage public facilities and so forth. That can certainly be more specific. But you're going to see in the land development code, well, hey, let's go through and adopt an impact fee to accomplish this goal. If the goal is too specific, it makes it hard to implement. It has to be just right for the community. So, coming back to your question, because of the nature of the land development code, it really is looked at in reverse, and the code will be changing, as needed to meet the plan. So you don't see those citations, in comprehensive plans that I have worked with. I've never seen one before that does have those type of citations, but I do know that certain communities may cross-reference, particular areas of interest and update those tables. It's not common, but I know it certainly has been done. And if it's something of particular interest, it definitely is done because it's something that's being monitored on a frequent basis.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Smith.
Just had a couple. We talked about changing the word affordable and using the word obtainable, and I've noticed several places in the document where it still says affordable. In 1.1.3, 1.1.6, 1.2.4, 1.2.5, 1.2.6, 1.2.7. So I think we need to be consistent if we're going to use attainable instead of affordable.
Okay.
In all those areas.
So from my perspective, like affordable housing and housing affordability is different thing. So there are a couple policies that we try to improve the affordability of housing, but since city itself we are not providing affordable housing, so there can be confusion. So I'll try to like make consistent. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you do that, the other thing I want to ask is, how does a resident go about determining if they qualify for being a historical site?
For their property?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a couple properties here in the downtown area, I think, that are on a historic registry. I'd have to check and see if we have a database for that. I know when you get a property on a historic registry, and you guys feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it has to go through like the federal government and all that.
All right. Because there've been a couple of residents have asked, how did they declare their home or
Yeah, I think you have
or their place of business of being a
petition.
historical site.
Yeah, I think you have to petition to be on a National Historic Registry. It's through some federal program, if I remember correctly.
So they don't have to apply through the city to do that?
They can, yeah, and then I think the city then deems it a historic property. I've worked in a city before where there were historic properties that were on a National Historic Registry. I'm not aware of any here in Apopka that are.
All right. Then my other concern was in 1.3.2 and 1.3.3 in reference to whether a home is livable or dilapidated. And in 1.3.2, it says the city will utilize code enforcement to require that the buildings and the sites be brought up to standard or the structure will be recommended for demolition. And then it turns around at 1.3.3 and says encourage the rehabilitation of existing housing and seek federal and state funds to rehabilitate or demolish the housing for which rehabilitation is not feasible.
Which one is that? I'm sorry, 1 point.
1.3.2 and 1.3.3. So who besides code enforcement is going to be working with the resident in order to bring their home up to standard as opposed to just recommending that it be demolished?
That would be the building official.
The building official.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
'cause
that
they
was
can,
under the future land use?
it's in
or
housing.
On the housing.
Oh,
Because the building official can deem a structure unsafe.
But we're saying that we will seek federal and state funds first to assist them in rehabilitating that home before demolishing.
Yeah, we try not to have it demolished. Yeah, we want to help them fix it up. I mean, if you want to alter the policy or whatever you think is best, feel free to let us know.
All right, let me take a look at that one a little bit more. Because I mean, I don't want code enforcement to go out and slap a stick on someone's house and say it's not livable, and then that person is not given some kind of assistance or the ability to rehabilitate if they don't have the means to do so.
Okay.
Okay. My other concern was in reference to preserving open space. We're talking about we're going to preserve open space, but at the same time, I noticed in the chart that open space was decreasing.
Which policy are you referencing, or which chart?
The pie chart that
Oh,
was
during the
shown
presentation. During Michelle's presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk to that one?
I can't remember. I thought it was agriculture that was decreasing.
No, public space was decreasing too.
Let's see if we can pull back up real quick.
Yeah, that chart. Is it? So it went from 1.7 down to 1.4.
Mm-hmm. Looking at park and rec, conservation. I just don't see it.
It's existing versus future land uses.
Say that again.
I said it's existing versus future land use. So existing is what the land use currently is, and future land use is the designation of the land use. That would be conservation. So I think that's the difference there between the two.
Yeah, conservation is, I think, 0.3% less. I don't know if it's because of annexations or I don't know.
Yeah. It could be properties that, like she's saying, could have been annexed. They could have the existing land use of conservation, like the actual land itself, not the future land use of the land, but it was maybe a conservation type property that somebody had developed into something that's not a conservation type property anymore. You know, they could have had a ag exemption on it where they put some cattle and some pine trees. that could be a possibility as well.
And are there any school sites designated in this future land use comp plan at all?
School sites would be institutional public use, and I think they can go in any future land use, and I know they can go in any zoning with a special exception. That's in the land development code.
That's in the land development code.
Yes, sir.
All right. That's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Velasquez.
Everyone seemed to have touched on a few of the things. First, I want to ask, did we incorporate a lot of what Kimberly Horn had recommended through the peer review?
We received their comments and we filtered ourselves after the internal discussion.
You did.
Yeah.
So it seems that the consensus that we kind of have up here so far has been to expand the open space, green space. Is that something that we're incorporating in our comprehensive plan?
I believe so. Yeah.
That's true. That's correct.
That is.
Yes.
And then the housing. Again, I guess they touched on a couple of the housing, but what I saw here, I'm going back and forth between the Kimberly Horn and what you have. So it says in the Kimberly Horn, it says add a new objective addressing attainable housing for households of variety of incomes. And then they kind of break it down. So we're not being specific in just say and addressing like affordable, where they're addressing attainable, affordable, workforce, and they actually break down the percentages. Is that particular what they had recommended? Are we incorporating that within the comp plan for us?
Which page of that one are you on,
That was
Commissioner?
on the Kimberly Horn housing element, and that was page 18. And it says add a policy with language such as to meet the growth projections for the year 2040, and the city shall accommodate through adjusting residential densities and non-residential intensities of future land use designation and expanding land use designations where most appropriate.
I think what they're
I thought it
referencing.
kind of covered the different products
Mhm.
that we should be encouraging. And I don't want to say encouraging because he's right. Encouraging is not really saying that
Sure.
it's required, but
Yeah.
it's required.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we can put that in there. I think what they're touching on is live local a little bit, the Live Local Act. But if that's something you desire to have in the comp plan, we can put it in there.
Okay. And then the other thing, which I thought was interesting, and I'm going to go right back to the beginning, capital improvements. Goal number 1, which was establish a policy that allows an order of priority set by the city administrator or the city council. Our form of government right now is a strong mayor, and the city administrator is sort of the second, and then it says or city council. So I didn't understand what that role was.
They might not have been familiar with our form of government here, because I think a lot of the jurisdictions they have a council manager type form. So maybe that's where they're coming from.
If you're going to put something in the comp plan, it needs to be specific
Sure.
what our roles are
Yeah.
and everyone's role. So
Right.
this way it's not ambiguous.
Yeah.
And it talked about the CIP, which we've gone over that. And Commissioner Nestor touched on that. Okay, under conservation, it had 1.1, was to add a new policy under the objective that requires the LDC, which is the Land Development Code, to include standards to protect the aquifer recharge areas and minimize potential contamination of water supplies in accordance with the St. John's River Water Management District. Is that, do you have strong language of that in the comp plan currently?
June, I think we put that one in there, didn't we? It's hard to remember all 720
Yeah.
policies. That's what we did.
I mean, well, we're having our issues with, Golden Gem
Sure.
and
Absolutely.
the Wakaiva.
If you
And
want
then
us-
we also, with the septic tanks and the sewer.
Yeah.
And as we're growing and, 20 years from now, 5 years from now, how are we addressing this? And strong language so that we continue to protect this.
we could put that in there. We'll double check and
Yeah.
see if we put it in there.
If not, we'll add it. Yeah.
Yeah. If not, we'll provide a thought we did.
Okay. Okay, that was that one.
June. That's there.
So this one was, again, I have gone through,
It's in the plan, Commissioner.
It's in-
Yes, Ms. Sanchez found it in the draft of the plan.
It's covered under conservation policy 1.2.12. So it actually does cite land development code, but it also requires you to follow all rules of FDP and St. John's and other jurisdictional agencies.
okay. I know that when I speak to Bobby, a lot of times when I ask him questions, he goes, that belongs in the land development code. But we revised our land development code. So now when we revise this comp plan, what's gonna happen to that land development code? Are we revising this around that? Or are we going to now update our land development code?
So I think we had mentioned at the beginning that the land development code, and the rewrite was done in 2019, now 6 years ago already, is that it doesn't reflect the comp plan. It was done backwards. So we're making this to reflect the land development code. But any issues within the land development code that don't accurately reflect the comp plan, we have to go back and amend that. And as you recall, when Mr. Hitt was here, he did a lot of the glitch amendments to the land development code because he would find things that weren't able to be done in practice as well. You'll probably recall some of those coming to the council.
Okay. Here was the economic element. If the city has a long-range economic development plan, it should be referenced here. Do we have that? I know that we just hired a consulting firm for a strategic plan. So how is that going to kind of mesh with what we're developing here, or kind of upgrading here?
So we asked our former economic development director to review the draft economic element that was provided, and she said not to follow through with it, not put it in the comp plan.
I'm sorry.
I said, she said, Ms. Boylan reviewed this. She said not to follow through with putting this in the comp plan.
Not to put this
Correct.
in there.
Mm-hmm.
So where would we put this in order to have a reference?
That would be more like a strategic planning document that you were referencing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a required element of a comprehensive plan to have an economic element.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm trying not to repeat some of the things that were already kind of touched on, so just and this one was the housing element. And that was 1.2.6. Okay, you have here assess and implement regulatory, administrative, or financial incentives as redevelopment opportunity presents themselves to better encourage, there's that word, encourage, the participation of the private sector in the development of affordable housing units. And then you have referred to the Live Local Act for examples of potential incentives. Yet, Kimberly Horn recommended to strike the language about Live Local Act and replace with bonuses for providing affordable housing with increasing bonuses for lower income household using HUD threshold definitions. So are we incorporating what Kimberly has recommended? And why are we still referring to the Live Local Act?
June, you can step in if I'm not remembering it correctly. So, Live Local is the law of the state. It's a state law. Live Local, we're required to follow it. That's one of the reasons why we left it in there. Some of the things they were talking about were density bonuses, and we've noticed that amongst the city, there doesn't seem to be a receptive attitude towards high density. So that's what our thought was, taking that out of that.
Didn't our city opt out of the Live Local Act?
Just the taxing provisions, if I recall correctly. Just
Um,
the taxing provisions, if I recall correctly. But we're still subject to Live Local.
You're still subject to
Yes,
that?
ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 1.3.3. And I thank you for your patience because as I read, I know that some of the things were touched upon. So,
Got to give it up for him. He stood there for 40
uh,
minutes.
yeah, I know. I'm so sorry. And I highlighted the stuff, but what happened is that a lot of it was touched on already. So rather than having to repeat it, it doesn't. Um, the details public can find regarding wetland protection. We touched on that. Oh, here, this one was interesting. Confirm whether 135 gallons per capita per day is still the most updated number, and that was under potable water and sub-element. Do I have that one here? No, I don't have that one here, but it should be here. Has that number changed, or is that number the same?
Is that in Kimberly Horn's
That
memo?
was under the potable water policy 2.2.1.
We can confirm with Miss Almodovar. With Diana Almodovar. We've sent this to her. We'll have her take a look at it.
Okay.
She's still reviewing the
She's still reviewing now?
yeah. So
Bobby, can I ask you just to speak a little louder?
Yeah.
Thank you. Pretty much sanitary, okay. Put policy, okay. This is still under sanitary sewer and sub-element. Is that, is Miss Diane, I'm still reviewing that? All right, so I won't even touch on that then. Okay,
You good?
that's me for now, and thank you for your patience.
All right. Commissioner Anderson.
Oh, I don't have a lot. Just clarification. So the land development codes will be updated to reflect these changes?
Any changes that really don't correspond between the comp plan and the land development code, there'll be updates to the land development code. And there's things in the land development code that we've uncovered continuously that need to be updated. As I was speaking, the former community development director used to prepare updates and bring them to the council on kind of a periodic basis. So there's some things that do need to be updated that would come forward after this comp plan rewrite has been done. And you might see some land development code updates come prior to the comp plan amendment or comp plan rewrite being approved. So there's a couple of things that our new engineer down in public services has found that needs to be put into the land development code.
Okay, thank you. One other thing, up under the housing element 1.35, do we currently have an existing housing assistance program through the CRA?
We have, and you said that was, I'm sorry, policy 1.3.5. We have a couple programs that offer some incentives, but I don't think they pay for new houses or anything. We have like an impact fee reimbursement program and a couple of others, but where it wouldn't build a brand new house for somebody.
So in regards to this particular policy here, the CRA is where we would look to implement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's at least in that portion of the town, but there could be other areas of town where housing assistance might be needed as well that are not within the CRA or they're downtown.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Chairman Gusler.
Yeah, to follow up on something that Commissioner Nesta touched on was the changing of the way we delineate how many police officers are needed by per resident to what standard. And I know that that's a pretty standard thing that's how, if you look up crime statistics or city statistics, they always say X amount of police officers per resident, or fire department, how many people per resident or per homes. And is that going to be a universal thing that covers the fire department and that and other services, or just the fire is just a change to the police department?
Chief Sanchez reviewed this as well. Let me see if I can find his comments. Okay, so his comment was fire AFD LOS, which is Apopka Fire Department. The city will ensure that it is served by certified emergency personnel. The city will maintain a level of service consistent with National Fire Protection Association service and ISO level standards, conducting an annual review of factors such as response time, population, number of fire stations, apparatus, and infrastructure. And then Fire LOS, he goes on to state that he put in the capital improvements element, achieve 1.8 firefighters per 1,000 residents with a benchmark of 2 firefighters per 1,000 residents, and stay consistent with NFPA level of service standards. So he has a number there, 1.8 per 1,000.
And that's going to apply to the 1.8 per 1,000 is for the police department?
That's for the fire department.
The fire department. Yes. So what about the police department?
The police department didn't establish a number. And I think that was what Commissioner Nesta had brought up, was that there was no number. But we can get back with the police chief and see if he wants to put a number in there.
Well, so and sorry to interrupt here, they do have on the draft 1, they do have the 2.3 law enforcement officers per 1,000,
okay.
Then 1.8 firefighters per 1,000, and then we're changing it to the verbiage you read.
Okay.
Just to clarify.
Right. And what is the impetus for that? What's to be gained there? In other words, I know that other cities and other police departments, from research I'd done years ago, that's one of their ratings. Is that, and does that have any effect on our ISO rating or insurance rates or anything else?
Yeah.
And what's the impetus to do that, to change that standard?
For the fire department, I know that's ISO, so that's totally different. The police, I would have to confer with the police chief to find out what the reasoning behind that was.
Okay, so we're changing it, but we don't know what the reason was. Just he requested it.
That's what he recommended to be put in the plan. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very well. That's it.
Okay. Any last questions before I open it up? I know Commissioner Moore's been waiting patiently. If she wants to come on down, and you got anything?
I just want to say, and I appreciate staff's time on this, and I know we kind of took a deeper dive. So I appreciate kind of the addition to all the stuff we commented. I know you guys have been taking notes and all that, so I appreciate it. And Member Mockett, I know you said you had a lot more there too. If you can send that around just so that we understand it and can make sure that's incorporated as well, I think that'd be very valuable. Thank you.
I really don't want to contribute. You've been here a long time, the conversation. Some of you, I wrote you a couple of notes on something. If I thought perhaps, like Commissioner Smith, when it was music to my ears when you were talking about historical preservation. I've done some research on that. I've gone to 2 Main Street conferences, and in order to get funding and get on those registries, you need to have a historic preservation ordinance. And the county doesn't have one either, so that's no. And then to answer your question, it's called a survey. And the last historical survey that I'm aware of was in your application in the 1990s for your CRA. And it was very interesting. One day on a board meeting that wasn't particularly interesting, I was looking through, and it was exciting to see all the homes from the 1880s that were existing in Apopka. But I discovered that many of them have been torn down, which is kind of tragic. So anyway, oops, I wrote a few notes. I appreciate the work on this. We worked on our comprehensive plan as well. It's a very tedious process, and I commend you for doing the work.
And what was that you said was called that we need for historic preservation?
You need to have your own ordinance. And what you'll see, particularly if I like to follow Sanford, they not only have an ordinance, but they have a committee that handles those things. Now, in Apopka, to be fair, the museum folks have done a lot of that work individually, where they've put plaques on your houses, but the homes were not on those state or federal registries because you don't have an ordinance. So I'd love that question. So,
all right. So, Ms. Howell, should that be something we put in our ordinance or in our land development code?
There would be an ordinance, and then, like the commissioner is saying, you would have to put that. I don't think historic preservation ordinances are within a land development code. I think it's just a standalone ordinance. When I worked with the city of Tavares, when I first started my career, like I said, they had a historic preservation district, and it was an ordinance, and you had to find properties and identify them and stuff like that. So,
but you have a survey back from the 1990s, and it was pretty thorough. It listed what year a lot of your older houses were built. So I don't know that it would be very costly to update it because it was pretty thorough from back in around 1993.
Are you able to afford us that? You said you have a copy of that survey?
It's in your doc. I got it from you. It's in your original. I can.
Okay.
It was in the original application for your CRA. And last summer, when I spent a little time with you all, I had done a deep dive into the CRAs in Winter Garden and Winter Park and looked at yours as well. And that's when I found that survey of all your historic properties.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Rogers, you got any?
Good afternoon. Rogers back at 7 West Main Street. I just want to make sure, I guess I got a good understanding of what you guys are trying to accomplish when it comes to the mixed use as well as the live work section of the land use code. Because to me, it's kind of a little confusing. From some fact, I noticed that it said live work can be inside a commercial as well as office space. However, it needs to be adjacent to residential. So I'm just thinking, practically, how does that work? So it seems as if you're not abutting those particular areas, you don't have the ability to do a live workplace type of designation in the same section. Because I look at it, for example, it can be any building can have commercial downstairs with residential up top. So is it that you guys see it as being mixed use versus a live work? Or just that A live work is, hey, a unit where I have my office space and then I have my residential. That really is more, I guess, is more residential than it is commercial. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand the designation between the two, or is that kind of one and the same?
So currently, our CC zoning district allows live work. However, our commercial future land use does not permit that. One would have to do a PUD in order to even do like a multifamily development within our commercial future land use. So that's kind of the reason for looking to do the live work. So live work, it would be like first floor, somebody has a little office there and they live up above it or something like that. And there's a lot of live work units in Baldwin Park, Celebration, those types of places.
Yeah, because I know I saw that in Baldwin Park.
Yeah.
Because I guess when I look at that, I think this might be just kind of how I see it, just from a simple term. I think we may be falling short, and I'm going to speak specifically for the CRA. The ability to add residential units in this core of the downtown area. And I think that's a mishap because I know currently the future land use, correct, is mixed use district, correct?
Actually, within the CRA, the zoning is mixed use downtown, but within the CRA, there's a patchwork of future land uses.
Okay.
So, and we talked about this, I believe, at the November CRA meeting, is possibly looking at doing a mixed use future land use within the CRA that would allow things like you're discussing, a lot of more residential opportunities, commercial mixed use, that type of stuff. One of the CRAs, Winter Garden, they have a specific future land use for their CRA. It's one consistent future land use.
And I think too, kind of looking at, I know county has did a 2050 plan and they've implemented like form-based codes and they're also going to have orange code. And I think something like that may be beneficial for some of the areas because if you really look at Apopka as a whole, it's kind of, like I said, it's patchwork of certain things. But if you want to kind of build, let's say, what's the vision of what we want our area to be, we really don't have anything that's pushing us that direction. So I would assume that this is the opportunity to use the comprehensive plan to help design what it is you want to see futuristic. So if you want to get density, higher levels, or you talk about walkability, well, if everybody got a parking space, it's gonna be difficult to do that. But if you can increase units to where, hey, I can't have my car, I might have to use my bike or some other particular type of transportation, then it may be more suitable. So I just think sometimes I know like from a data standpoint, it all looks great, but as far as practicality, then you're going to say, okay, there again, the city's getting bigger, so I imagine there's going to be more people, more development. So do you want to spend every council meeting going through redevelopment plans? Or is it this opportunity to kind of say, hey, this is what we want things to look at. Hey, you go to staff, it meets these criteria, we can move forward and then speed up the development process as well. So I think this is, is another time that we can really deep dive into that. I know this is a lot of information. I know I haven't had a chance, and nor do I want to read through all 91 or whatever it is. But I'm just saying from my perspective, what's the best way for me? Hey, if I see this, does this work? Do I have to go to the city and have a long drawn out meeting and go through all these, it's a lot of cost in that. So if you want to kind of speed up the process, hey, this is what we want to do in this area. We kind of segmentize it, sector it, or however it is. But this is what we're trying to achieve over time. And I think this is the perfect opportunity at this point in time. If it's from 20 to 2040, we should do it now, but do a deeper dive. But that's just kind of my 2 cents for the most part. Thank you.
Bobby?
I think Mr. Beckett brings up some good points, specifically in our CRA, the redevelopment plan says, and it recommends having one unified future land use. It recommends a form-based code within the CRA as well, and it would some form-based codes basically allow somebody to come in and they'll say there's certain thresholds that staff has approval to permit developments on in areas you'd want to redevelop or have a development potential. For instance, I used to work for the city of Winter Springs. We had a town center, and there were certain projects that had staff level approval, so that you knew what you were kind of getting, and it took a lot of that, what Mr. Beckett was referencing, out of the process.
All right. Anybody else from the public? Okay. Any last thoughts from anybody? Any questions? Any thoughts?
I just want to thank Michelle. Where are you? Kind of hiding behind there. Thank you for, and I want to thank the staff and our P&Z group and the commissioners up here for, agreeing to have this second uh, workshop for the comp plan, because I felt the first time, and I did explain that to her today. I thanked her. I felt like the first time she came, she ran through it, and we really didn't have any interaction. I felt today we did, and so thank you to everyone that did kind of have an input, and I certainly appreciate the documentations that you did provide to all of us that allowed us to kind of see where some changes were made, and I hope that whatever's taken from here, we incorporate it and we get to see it before we vote on it to make sure that we're sending it, because it is a document that it's going to be there, and it's going to guide us for the future of our city. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the planning staff and Michelle with the Regional Planning Council, Jean, Amir, and June. They've worked really hard, countless hours on this, and Mr. Hand as well. He's been a really valuable asset. So you have a great staff, a great contractor we've been working with. So we're looking forward to crossing the finish line on this.
I just want to ask one question. I noticed in the comp plan, I forget what the term is called, where we're encouraging individuals to build additional housing in their backyard if it's suitable. What's it called?
Accessory dwelling units.
Accessory dwellings.
Right.
I know that's something that they have approved in Orange County. Have we had anyone to come to the city and ask that be done? And then if so, and if we're encouraging that, does that require council approval,
I'm
or
going
is
to put
that done at staff level?
Mr. Hamza has worked on a couple of those. You want to talk about a couple of those you've worked on?
Hi, nice to meet you all. So for accessory dwelling units, so it's basically based on the specific zoning. So in the mixed use downtown, it is all accessory dwelling units require special exception permits, and they're done through the planning commission decides if they'll allow an accessory dwelling unit on a property or not. In the mixed use downtown, they're allowed, with the special exception, they're allowed up to 500 square feet in area size, total area for an accessory dwelling unit. But if it's in the other residential zoning that allows an accessory dwelling unit, it can go up to 1,000 square feet, but they have to, the size of the lot has to be at least an acre in size. So if there's a zoning that, other than mixed use downtown, that allows an accessory dwelling unit, and if it's not within an acre in size, we won't even allow it under a special exception. So, and also an accessory dwelling unit would not be considered a unit that like anyone can live in or rent, or property owner can't rent it out to someone else. It can only be used for as the anyone in relation that is a family or of the property owner or the property owner themselves. But yeah, that's pretty much the accessory dwelling.
And who would enforce who's living there?
It'd be the owner of the property, or whoever the owner of the property is. You mean
So it's an honor system.
Or their neighbor.
pretty much, yeah. It's an honor system. I mean, code enforcement can come in. Code enforcement can come in and they can do an inspection and see if they're related to the property owner or not. But I mean, if they're renting it out, I'm just giving a scenario. If they're doing like an Airbnb or renting it out as an apartment, then that's not what an accessory dwelling unit is for. So they'll get fined. If that were to
And
happen.
so is the accessory dwelling unit approved at staff level?
It's approved at the planning commission under a special exception, and then once they have a special exception permit, then they can apply for the building permit.
So do we have any currently?
Pardon?
Do we have any currently?
We do in the city, yeah. There have been many special exception permits that were passed regarding an accessory dwelling unit, and currently, actually, last week, I talked to an applicant who's actually having her building permits to construct one on their property right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to echo what Bobby said. Is we got a great planning staff, and it's a lot of hours. Kicking around. I mean, how many iterations along the way, and Michelle and your team has just been an amazing partner with the city, and appreciate what East Central Florida Regional Planning Council does for our area, and thank you for being a part of this. So thanks everybody for coming out tonight.